Welcome to Right on Track, a songwriting podcast. Thanks to Tone for tuning in. I'm Demi Michelle Schwartz, and I'm thrilled you're joining me on my songwriting journey. So kick back and relax, don't fall flat, and remember, stay right on track. Hey everyone, welcome back to Right on Track. Joining me today is David Rosen. Hey David.
Hey, thanks so much for having me on the show.
Of course, I'm super excited to have you. How are you doing today?
I am doing great. It's a cleaning day. I'm cleaning the house, but gotta take breaks here and there.
Not quite to the spring cleaning here yet.
Yeah, this will
Uh,
make spring cleaning easier, I guess. Let's say.
For sure. Well, I'm super excited you are on the show because we are going to be chatting all things instrumental music. Before we dive into that, can you share a little bit about yourself and your musical journey?
Sure. I mean, there's a lot of different avenues to go down, honestly, but I mean, the bulk of it is yes, I compose instrumental music for film, TV. I've had placements through libraries and that kind of stuff. I also put out albums of instrumental music and have worked with artists here in Las Vegas. And I also produce and host podcasts. So I do all kinds of things within the world of audio. And also work with my family at our record store here in Las Vegas called Wax Trax Records. So really just music all around in every way, shape, and form.
That's fantastic. So, what do you think draws you to instrumental music?
I like working by myself in my room with the door shut and the lights out, and, you kinda can't do that with, like, a band or, like, like, you need to be a little more, like, I guess, collaborative if you're gonna try to go into that avenue of music, and, of course, I collaborate with filmmakers all the time, but that is more so, "Let's meet, let's talk," and then I go to my room and work on the music, and, like, that's the way I like to work. I like to, sit there and just lock in and come up with ideas and play with those ideas and kind of massage them until they turn into fully formed pieces of music. And uh that's something that really kind of works as a solo artist in the world of instrumental music.
Yeah, it's almost like you have full control over the creative process, whereas like a songwriter like me who does pop and country, even though I write my songs by myself, I work with a producer and oftentimes other
Mhm.
musicians, so there's more people involved. So coming from a composer standpoint, doing instrumental music sounds like a very solo world, but I think like what you said, it's nice getting to do that yourself. Shut the door, get to work, and you're able to take the time you need and you don't have outside pressure from other creatives. You're able to imagine your music how you want to.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're kind of like on your own time. It's like I could work for, the next 30 minutes to an hour on something, or I could work for the next 6 hours on something. It's not, no, nobody else's time is involved in that process.
For sure. So we have a great quote for this episode by Aubertine Woodward Moore. So can you read that?
Wonderful is the power of instrumental music, absolute music without words that may convey impressions deep and lasting no words could give.
This is incredible. So why did you select this one?
Well, I think it's, like, so perfectly apt for what I try to do, specifically with my albums of instrumental music. I do even though there's no words, I do want to kinda paint a picture and tell a story with the music that I'm making, and sometimes I get to explore that a little bit more by collaborating with filmmakers on music videos for my tracks. I've had a lot of, music videos that have played in film festivals, a few won some awards here and there, and, that's always a really fun thing to do. And again, that's where I get to collaborate. But even when I'm just making a piece of music that isn't going to get that kind of story added later, in my head there's usually stories involved, and I'm picturing things while I'm making that music. And whether or not I ever tell the world what I was thinking, it doesn't always necessarily happen, but in my head there's definitely a beginning, middle, and end to these songs. There is a point to them, even though there's no words.
That's fantastic. I actually really relate because I started music as a pianist. And so focusing on playing only instrumental music, piano pieces, you really need to focus, I think, more on the emotion while you're doing something that's purely instrumental because when you have lyrics to a song, you can use that as kind of an anchor for what the song is about, the
Mhm.
title, and what you hope listeners take away from it. But when you have purely instrumental music, so much is up for interpretation because, like the music creates an emotional landscape and all these different colors based on the chords being used and all of the elements that make up a musical track. And so I think that writing instrumental music is very focused on, conveying that emotion through the musical choices. And along with playing piano, I actually did compose a few piano pieces of my own, and it's just very different getting to communicate however I'm feeling emotionally through that music without having to use words.
Absolutely, and, also with my film scoring work, like, my job as a composer for the film is, to help, uh elevate the scene and make sure that the filmmaker's vision is coming across. And sometimes, maybe the film without the music there, it doesn't necessarily 100% get the point across that it's supposed to the viewer, and that music helps tell that story. Even though maybe on its own you wouldn't necessarily realize what that story is, but when everything kind of comes together, it hopefully leads to a real piece of art.
Absolutely. That's super interesting. I feel like when I'm watching movies and TV shows, it's almost like you're aware of the music, but you're not really focusing on it as a standalone piece of music. You're looking at it as in comparison with what's going on the
Mhm.
screen. And so I think it's really interesting how that's such a focus for composers who write scores for film and TV because you need to write something that fits the vision of what that scene is trying to show and what the filmmaker wants to show. So, can you talk about your journey a little more into breaking into the whole film side of things?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that's like an ongoing process and constantly, a challenge to find gigs. And, I'm constantly working at that. But yeah, it's something I've been doing for almost 20 years at this point. And I've scored, I think, 5 or 6 features at this point, and dozens and dozens of short films and various other kinds of projects. But it's always different, like, every time. And, I've been lucky the last, like, few years. Now that I've been, like, kinda splitting my time between music and podcasting, like, I don't have as much time to be just, like, scouring the internet looking for jobs. But luckily, things keep coming my way, recommendations and word of mouth and stuff like that, people telling people to, contact me for music for their films. And so I've been continuing to do more work. I just finished a film, 2 films last year, actually, and I'm about to start on another short film. But, yeah, it's just always different from film to film. It just depends on how that filmmaker works and what their idea of collaboration is. And sometimes they just send me the film and say, "Do your magic," And sometimes it's more like sitting together and, like, doing spotting sessions or whatever, where we have to, go down it, scene by scene, making notes and figuring out exactly what they want me to do. So, it really just changes from project to project.
Yeah, for sure. So, can you expand a little on when you make that magic happen, whether they give you notes or you're basically set loose to do what you want? What is your process of taking this film or this scene and developing a score or soundtrack that goes along with that?
First thing is always just watching it, and which, a lot of times these are unfinished, and so it's, not the best thing in the world to have to sit there and watch a whole film where the, color's not done, editing's maybe not 100%, and, but, you sit and watch it, you kinda make some mental notes, and, then I usually break it down into scenes and, like, what I think they're trying to convey with each scene. And that way I kinda just have a basic structure of where I'm gonna be going from scene to scene, and, like, maybe which ones can kinda tie together, like, if there's gonna be a theme or something like that, that ties from scene to scene. But, then it's just once I actually sit down and start making music, it's not that different from when I'm working on my instrumental albums. It's just, me locked in, trying to come up with something that sounds good but fits the idea that I'm going for. And the difference being that the idea I'm going for isn't just 100% my vision. It's now something that has to also lock in with the vision of what the film is trying to say.
For sure, that's super interesting. So you've mentioned your instrumental albums a couple times. So let's shift gears into that. So what inspired you to start releasing your own instrumental music?
Um, I I think it's something I always wanted to do, but when I first started, like the first 10 years, I didn't feel like my music was, not that it wasn't good enough, but it just wasn't, full enough, it was just like, I would say it's just instrumental music, like, it didn't feel like it was like they were songs, and as these tracks started growing, even though they're still just instrumental, like, they started to feel more and more like songs, and I was so excited to finally put one out. My first album, Echoes in the Dark, was actually 10 years ago. It was in 2013. So yeah, it's coming up on the anniversary in September. But yeah, once I, kind of broke through and did that first one, I've been putting albums out every year or every 2 years since. And my most recent one just came out called More Content, which is kind of a play on everything now, just being like a constant onslaught of content. And the albums have just continued to grow and grow in what I'm able to do and what I'm able to convey with instrumental music. And I'm kind of trying to play with a lot of my influences with these albums. Like, I'm a huge fan of The Cure, also Depeche Mode and Nine Inch Nails, and a lot of industrial music. And like, I'm kind of like synthesizing all of those influences into trying to make something that's my own. And I feel like in the last 5 to 10 years, I'm really like kind of making that. I'm making the music that I was hoping would represent what a David Rosen album sounds like.
That's fantastic. I love how you brought up your inspirations because I think that recognizing who inspires us and finding ways of creating original music that's kind of tied into our inspirations, I think that's really important because we all grow from ourselves and we all grow from the music we listen to, and finding ways of rooting what we believe to be great instrumental music, in your case, finding ways to fit into that world while still being unique is really important. And also, I think it's so cool how even though these songs don't have lyrics, that when you create a full project, not just a standalone track or score for a movie, but when you create a project, it's going to have a cohesive feel, just like a pop album would or country
Yeah.
album would. So, how do you go about deciding concepts and bringing that out in this music?
Well, that's, like, really important to me, and it's kinda sad because I feel like that's being lost a lot. Like, it seems like all of the popular, tips and guidance lately says, like, release singles and release EPs, and, like, I don't wanna do that. Like, I may start doing some of it, I don't know. I have a bunch of songs that don't necessarily fit, the albums that I've been working on, so, maybe I'll release some more singles, but, like, I'm definitely an album guy, and I grew up with albums, and I definitely celebrate that and want to continue in that tradition. But yeah, I whenever I'm working on songs, like definitely uh, sometimes they change like as the track grows, and like it's like, oh, I meant this one to be for this project, but now it's kind of sounding a little bit more like it would fit better on this album. And so things definitely do change along the way. But yeah, I usually am thinking of some kind of concept for each album. Like right now, I'm working on a bunch of albums all at the same time, but like one of the albums is specifically going to be the like darkest, most like spookiest and weirdest and kinda creepiest music I've ever made. I do tend to gravitate towards dark music on a lot of my stuff, but this one I'm gonna lean in, and, so it's like I'm making songs that really fit that and are, like, almost scary in a way, whereas then I'm working on other tracks, it's like, "Oh, this isn't scary anymore, now this is, like, upbeat and fun, so I'm gonna have to save this for another album." But,
Yeah.
I'm kind of all over the place because of the way that I get my influences from all over the place. I love a lot of pop music. I love a lot of singer-songwriters. I love film soundtracks. So like whatever I'm working on, it definitely could go in a lot of different directions.
That is fantastic. And just to expand on your point about how people say release singles, release EPs, not albums, I love doing full projects. Like my debut album came out in 2021, and then last year I released an EP, and now I'm working on another project I'm hoping is going to be a mini album. I just think that even though they take longer to create, you can capture so much sonically and lyrically and conceptually in a bigger project than just a standalone single. And so, yeah. And also, I think that it's really cool how you're so focused on instrumental music because I personally think that in a lot of popular music now, especially in like the pop world and country, that there's not as much emphasis on the instrumental track behind what's going on with the lyrics. And I am so focused on like picking chords, like suspended chords and, like seventh chords, and like from my piano background, pulling on the theory to make my tracks, especially my pop ones, kind of draw into those unique landscapes because a lot of people say, "Oh yeah, just do the 1 5 minor 6 4," and it's just that's not interesting to me. And I
Right.
think that in my music especially, I'm trying to bring in unique sounds instead of just doing your stereotypical thing, making it sound cool with production and singing a melody over top and being done. And so like because you focus on instrumental music, you have to lean into those different colors in the music because you don't have the other things to rely on.
Yeah.
And I was like internally laughing when you were talking about the darker, spooky stuff because I actually just recorded a song called Quiet. And I'm planning on releasing this like around Halloween in October just because the track that my producer and I put together, it sounds like something from a horror movie. And
Nice.
like when I'm singing over top of it, like my vocals and the way I'm singing adds to it, but it all starts with that instrumental track capturing that vibe and that emotion. And so I honestly think that even the songs being recorded in the commercial music world that have lyrics over top of the songs, I think we can still focus on those different qualities that you bring in just instrumental music because it adds so much to the songs.
Yeah, absolutely. We should collaborate on a playlist for
Oh,
Halloween this year.
yeah. Yes. That'd be fantastic. So, one thing I definitely wanted to ask you, which I think is really interesting, is because you don't have lyrics or hook really to draw on for a title, how do you go about titling your projects?
That's like this weird thing that like I don't even know where they come from. Like I will just be listening and I'll come up with a name and it sticks. I do have like it's funny, like, my wife and I will joke about it, like, that sounds like the name of a David Rosen song, and so I'll jot it down in, like, my notebook, and then, like, eventually I'll be like, "Oh, yeah, that one, that will fit this song," and so, yeah, there's just these words that words and phrases that, like, come up that are like, "That sounds like it would be one of my songs," so and yeah, sometimes it does, fit with those, kinda story elements that I have in mind in the background of these songs, even though, again, no words, but sometimes it's just a vibe and it just fits.
That's really cool because it's really all focused on what emotion does this convey, what's the storyline behind it, and then figuring out a title that fits from that musical side of things. I think that's really cool because when you're writing songs with lyrics, it's almost like, oh, yeah, that's the line that's repeated 6 times. That's the title. So there's not as much
Sure.
thought that goes into it. And so I think it's really cool because it's also up for interpretation. Like, I'm pretty sure if you had like an instrumental track, you played it for 10 people and said, like, what comes to mind? Like, what emotion comes to mind for you, or what scene in your mind is playing? What title comes to mind? Like, all 10 people will probably say different things. And I think that's what's so cool about instrumental music is because there aren't any lyrics to specifically state a story, you can kind of make your own interpretation from that.
Absolutely. I'll give a tip to any musicians that are listening right now, though. Never release a self-titled album.
Don't do it.
You you can't search for David Rosen and find the album that I put out, my 6th album I made self-titled, I just felt at the time like it made sense, and, so I named it David Rosen, and you just can't search for the album David Rosen because you find all the other David Rosen stuff, so
Yeah.
don't do it.
And also too, it's just like there are so many artists mainstream who like do that, and it's like pick something that's cool. Like if there's a lyric, like my new EP, "It Is What It Is," that came out in November. I pulled the EP title from one of the songs. And it's just, like,
Mhm.
really cool when you do that and,
Yeah.
just a concept and an overarching concept, which is the one I'm working on right now. I just think it adds a unique touch. No shade to your self-titled, but
Yeah, that poor album, no one can ever search for it.
oh my gosh. So, what do you think your favorite thing about creating instrumental music is, and what's the most challenging?
My favorite thing is that I genuinely love the music that I make, and I know, like, for some people that might even be weird to say, like, a lot of people, like, love to, like, hate their own stuff or whatever. I love my music, and I can listen to it constantly, and I think that that's just, such an awesome thing to have made this music that is something that I love to sit and listen to. The most challenging thing is always gonna be getting more and more listeners to check it out, and as much as it's rewarding enough to just have this music for me to listen to, I do want people to hear it, and I've been lucky. I have, a lot of people out there who do get to hear it and send feedback and, buy my albums and watch my music videos and hire me to score their films and whatnot, but, you just wanna see it continue to grow, and, growth is hard when there's so much content out there.
Mhm, for sure. Yeah, I really like your mindset though, because I think loving what you create is so important.
Mhm.
I can't imagine creating music and hating it and having to put it out and promote it and
Right.
do all that. Like, I just cannot. So, yeah, writing music first and foremost that you love for you is really important. And then obviously, like, we want to see that grow. I think that's any musician's dream is to see their music be heard and bought and shared and listened to. So, yeah, no, I completely agree with that.
Awesome. Yeah, and it's a constant thing. Like everything I do, even when I'm podcasting, my podcast is about movies, and like even doing that, like I play one of my songs at the end of every episode, just as like a almost like a plug for my
That's
other
perfect.
thing. So it's like everything kind of ties back because music is who I am. When it comes down to it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, out of everything that you've done with instrumental music, do you have any favorite memories?
Oh, I have a lot. A lot of it would be tied into my music videos. Like I'm so proud of those, and I really want to make some more like really cool ones. Like there's ones that I've made myself, which I'm proud of those too, and they're really cool. But they're more like abstract visual stuff, and they're really cool. But I really love the story based ones. There's this one called Artificial that it was a story that I wrote to go along with the song. It was again like one of these ideas where I pictured an entire story to the track, even though there's no words there. And then I collaborated with this filmmaker named Ben Yonker, and this was 5 years ago, I think. Um, but yeah, it just came out so well, and it's about this woman who builds herself this artificial companion, but then kind of stuffs him in a locker after she meets a guy, and it's, like, really sad and, like, really melancholy, and it fits the song so well, and he just brought it to life. It just made this, like, really great creature out of, like, a sack puppet, and,
Oh my
like, it
gosh.
it's so cool, and he made it just so well, and then there's this other one, called Back into the Dark, which, was a collaboration with a visual artist named B. Landers, and she did it all stop motion, and it's like super cool, creepy, like kind of Tim Burton-y, I guess, a little bit like stop motion animation. And I want to make another stop motion one sometime soon. I love stop motion, but just the fact that these things exist and it's my music and ideas that I was putting out there is it's really cool to see, and I'm definitely really proud of those two, and I'm proud of so many other moments throughout my
Yeah.
career.
No, for sure. So, it's really interesting. So, when you are scoring for TV shows and films, it's like you have to follow what the film director is envisioning for that movie or whatever. But when
Mhm.
you're doing your music videos, you're the one who created that piece of music and you want a visual to go along with that. So, it's kind of
Mhm.
like an opposite process for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And then it becomes, yeah, collaborative in the opposite direction, trying to get somebody else to tell your story in the way that you kind of envisioned. And I've been lucky to work with some really great filmmakers, and I'm hoping to work with some more in the future. I have a new animated music video coming out soon called Ascending, which an animator is working on the animation for that, and hopefully have a couple other irons in the fire right now for tracks from both from more content and from my next album. So yeah, we'll see how that goes.
Fantastic. Well, good luck with that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So, aside from doing the scoring and creating your own music and the music videos, do you have any dreams as an instrumental musician that you hope to do at some point in the future?
Well, I I really just wanna do more of everything, like, I wanna work on some bigger feature films, like, I'm proud of what I've done so far, but I wanna, work on some that maybe, like, come out in the theaters and whatnot. These have all, gone to streaming, which is awesome, and, I'm really happy to have worked on them. But I wanna, experience the big rollout and all that, so I wanna work on some bigger films like that, and, also, I'd love to work on a big monster movie, that would be awesome, and
Let's get you an Oscar.
Yeah, hey, why not? I'm down. Uh, and, as far as, like, the instrumental stuff, though, like, I have so many ideas, like, I have, like, 3 more albums in the works currently that, like I said, kind of fit particular themes, but I have other ones too that I wanna do, um, with very specific themes, like nighttime driving music, like, I wanna do something that's, like, specifically just that, that really captures that vibe of driving down a dark highway at night and keep that feeling going for like a full 15 songs.
That's
Like
perfect.
I want to do something like that soon, and I want to do something that's more of like an homage to one of my favorite albums, and then also later this year I'm planning, as long as it continues, it's coming out great so far, but I'm planning on releasing my first ever cover, which I've never done
Oh,
before. It's a
wow.
cover of a Cure song, so we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I mean, there's so many things I want to do. I also want to do an album that's specifically going back to some of my earlier music now that I'm, more advanced musically and kind of, reimagining some of it. So I think that that'll be a really fun and actually like maybe the most challenging thing I've done. So there's so many ways to go.
Yeah, for sure. So many things. Well, it was lovely having you on. What is some advice you would like to share to anyone who is interested in doing instrumental music?
Make a whole bunch of it. That that's seriously my number one advice. Like when I was first getting started, I was making 50, 60, 100 tracks a
Oh
year,
my
like,
gosh.
just yeah, like, seriously, just sitting there and pumping out music and not necessarily finishing all of it, but, coming up with melodies, coming up with beats, coming up with whatever I could come up with, and then go listen to it in the car or, when I go to the gym or whatever, and, not all of it did I go back and finish, but just starting ideas and getting to play around with my instruments, with my effects, with my music software, with everything else, and learning to do things just by doing them. Just keep making and making and making, and just don't stop doing that.
Perfect. Well, it was an honor having you on the show for such a fantastic conversation. Can you share with everyone where they can find you online and listen to your music?
Yeah, well, people can find my website. It's bydavidrosen.com. I'm also on all the social media sites at by David Rosen, music by David Rosen on Instagram. And also my music videos, which you can find on the website too. They're on my YouTube channel, which is Music by David Rosen. And all my albums are out there under the name David Rosen. My most recent one, like I said, more content, just came out on New Year's, and there'll be another one later this year.
Fantastic. Well, David, thank you so much for joining me. Listeners, I hope you enjoyed this conversation all about instrumental music. And of course, until next time, stay
Stay right
right
on
on
track.
track.